Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm John Schilling, aka GP13. I'm a professional sports bettor with over $1 million in earnings. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about something that I think is the most important topic in sports betting today, in modern sports betting, which is parlays. Before we get started on today's episode, though, I have a quick announcement. I've teased it on earlier podcasts and videos, but I've officially launched GP Picks Plus. What it is it's a automated bet feed that uses basically price movement to identify what sharp bettors are betting. And it's going to tell you what they bet and where you can bet it at a better price. It's not going to make you a professional bettor, but what it's going to do, it's going to give people who are either crunched for time or just starting a way to beat the bookmaker, and a pretty easy way to beat the bookmaker. So go check it out. Link in the description, and it'll be over at goldenpants.com under the GP Picks Plus tab. I've long been an advocate for parlays being completely underutilized by sharp bettors, but I think they're also misunderstood by square bettors. They're just completely misunderstood. So in this episode, I'm going to explain why parlays are important, what are the common misunderstandings, and how you can utilize them to make a lot more money. Over half the money I've made in sports betting has come from parlays. So they are an incredibly important part of the modern sports bettors arsenal. I think back in the day, it was just straights, and a lot of the old school bettors, they make a lot of money on betting straights, and that was the industry then. The industry's changed. And now I think a lot of the best sports bettors are making at least a decent chunk of their money using parlays. So it's really important, if you want to pursue this for any type of profit, that you understand where you can gain an advantage with parlays. I think there's 3 levels of the common misunderstanding around parlays, and it kind of is like, parlays are really good, parlays are really bad, parlays are really good. And the truth is, it's all dependent on situation. I want to address kind of what I see as the 3 common misunderstandings of parlays before we get into how we can use them to make a lot of money. So let's start. So the first one is level 1 square betting understanding of parlays, which is parlays are good because they allow you to get plus odds. So I've talked about this a few times. There's this desire amongst beginning sports bettors, square sports bettors, to always get plus odds on a bet. What are plus odds? Basically, it's anything that will pay you more in profit than what you bet. So, plus 150 odds American, you bet $100 and you win, you get 150 in profit back. People tend to want to seek out plus odds, and I think it's because we as humans have a hard time of conceptualizing probability. We do default to it's the classic saying, it's like it's 50-50, you win or you lose. But like I do think that our brains aren't wired to properly understand the nuances in probability, aka the difference between like 85% and 80%, let alone the difference between 52% and 50%, or when you could cross from plus to minus and still be profitable. Let's say that yours truly had the honor to meet LeBron James on a basketball court. And he was like, hey, you want to play one-on-one, first to 11. At that game, FanDuel Sportsbook was there. And they said, let's post a line for everybody. And they said, you know what, LeBron versus GP13, LeBron minus 400. Would you parlay that, to get plus odds? Would you not bet it because you're not getting plus odds? Like, both of those would be incorrect. What you should do is drive to the bank and put it all on LeBron minus 400 versus GP13, because I can't win. I'm never going to win, right? So what odds are is they're just a representative of probability. When you say like plus 100, what does that mean? What you're saying is just 50%. It has to win 50% of the time to break even. If you say minus 200, what does that mean? Well, you actually have to win that bet 66.6% of the time to break even. So if it was minus 200 LeBron versus GP13, and LeBron just has to win 66.6% of the time to break even, you'd be like, that's a great bet. He's going to win 100% of the time, so I will bet that. A very common trope of the beginning bettor is to parlay a lot of like money line favorites together, like Chiefs minus 200 versus the Raiders, and we'll then take the Rams, minus 250 versus the Falcons, and we'll smush them together, and we'll add in like the Eagles, minus 180 versus the Giants, and we'll put them all together and we'll get plus odds. And that's great because we get to bet it on the favorites and we get plus odds. The reality is, like, the plus, the minus, it doesn't really matter. It's just the probability of the event versus the implied probability the odds are giving you. Do not think of parlays as some kind of way to get one over on the books by getting plus odds. If that was the case, they would all be bankrupt. Common misconception number 2, and this is what I'd call the like semi-sharp misconception, or maybe like more experience better misconception, is that all parlays are bad. Because a bet is a parlay, it is a losing bet. That's not true at all. The math behind the parlays it's the same as the math behind straights. What you get is if you have 2 winning straight bets or 2 plus EV straight bets, you put them together in a parlay, that parlay also has a positive expected value. If you have 2 plus 100 bets and whatever, you identify them to be winning bets, when you put them together, you have a parlay that pays plus 300. That's the honest to God math. There's a lot of ways the sports books are going to try and screw you. The parlay math is actually not one of them. If you think about it, you have plus 100 bet 50% break even, another plus 100 bet 50% break even, multiply them. Your probability of hitting both is 25%. What is plus 300? 25% break even. So just because it's a parlay doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad bet. There's no extra juice the sports bet puts on a traditional parlay. Same game parlays are a little bit different. We'll talk about those later. A straight up 2 football games money line parlay, they're not adding anything extra there. So just because it's a parlay doesn't automatically make the bet a losing bet or a worse bet from an ROI perspective. And I think that's a common misconception around people who have maybe been doing this for a while at a more recreational level, because you hear parlays are sucker bets. I think it's more that suckers like to bet parlays, not necessarily like parlays are sucker bets, but a lot of the long-term losing players really enjoy betting parlays, so they get that reputation, and I think it's unjustly earned. The third common misconception is what I would call the sharp misconception. It's like parlays are this cure-all. Parlays are automatically just as good as straights because the house doesn't add any more juice to them, so you might as well bet parlays instead of straights because it's the exact same thing. It's not exactly the exact same thing. The ROI is going to be comparable, but you have a slightly smaller expected bankroll growth due to the Kelly stake, if you're following Kelly or whatever. I will run through the math a little bit here. I'm not going to go do the full Kelly calculation and whatnot, but basically let's take the example where you have the same like plus 100 bet and plus 100 bet. Let's say you have a plus 100 bet, you think you're going to win 55% of the time. That's a 10% ROI. You're like, okay, how much should I bet on a single plus 100 bet? Kelly's going to tell you full Kelly's going to tell you to bet 10% of your bankroll there, and you have 10% of your bankroll, or let's say you have a $1,000 bankroll, and Kelly's going to tell you bet $100. You're going to have a 10% ROI on that bet. You're going to return an expected dollar amount of $10. Now let's say you have the exact same bet. So you bet both for what Kelly says. You would return 10 expected dollars on the first, 10 expected dollars on the second. That would be 20 expected dollars overall. Now say you parlay the 2 bets together, right? So instead of saying I'm going to bet on each separately, I'm going to parlay them together. Now on that parlay, you have a 21% ROI. Kelly's going to tell you to bet 7% of your bankroll. So you're going to wager $7 with a 21% ROI. You're just going to have to trust me on these numbers. You can go check them in a Kelly calculator after this. And your expected dollar amount is going to be 14.7. So you're going to actually return slightly less in expected dollars, even though the ROI of the parlay is actually a smidge higher than the ROI of the 2 bets put together. Again, it's not necessarily just an ROI thing. There's a staking aspect to this that makes straight betting slightly better from an expected bankroll growth standpoint. This is where I just want everyone to some people get overly excited. Oh, parlays are this fix, and there's just no reason to ever bet a straight. Straights are technically better in a vacuum. Now there's other factors that we're going to discuss later that make parlays more attractive from, say, a longevity standpoint or the ability to get more down. But just in a vacuum, you would pick just bet the 2 straights instead of parlay them together, because your expected bankroll growth is higher. Okay, now let's get into the good stuff, which is why parlays can help you make more money as a sharp bettor, as a profitable bettor. It's not just for suckers. Here's how, I've used parlays, and a lot of other professional bettors have used parlays to accomplish a variety of things, between making outsized returns to staying under the radar with sportsbooks and not getting limited as quickly. The first thing is about not getting limited as quickly. Variance. Parlays are higher variance, and I like to say it's easy to tell if someone's a winning bettor after 50 straight bets, but it's a lot harder to tell if someone's a winning bettor after 50 parlays. In my last newsletter, I did an example which was using the bankroll simulator on goldenpants.com. I gave an example of 100 straight bets, and I ran 10,000 simulations of 100 straight bets, flat staking method, where they were, had a 4% ROI over 100 bets, ran 10,000 simulations on it. And then I had somebody who had a parlay that was like plus 500, plus 600, something like that. But basically the parlay was 8% ROI. So it was double the ROI, but the odds were longer, right? I ran 10,000 simulations for each, and the straight bet won 62% of the time, was up money 62% of the time over the 10,000 simulations for 100 bets. The parlay with double the ROI was only winning 60% of the time. What does this tell me? If I'm a sports book, it's harder for me to determine if someone's a winning bettor over at least a small sample of bets if all they're doing is betting high variance parlays. It's very, very difficult. Like if you take that plus 500 from the newsletter example and you ratchet it up to like plus 2,000, it becomes even more difficult. So you can generate EV while making the sports books give you a longer leash to determine if you're a winning bettor or not, especially when it comes down to just your P&L. So that's 1A for parlays. Like, they add variance. Anytime we add variance, we add uncertainty for the sports books. So I've always said the best way to increase longevity is to increase variance. It's very uncomfortable. We're basically paid to handle variance, handle risk, and to do it properly. So if you can add variance but also increase your winning, I think that's kind of the golden ticket to big profits sports betting, but it's going to lead to bigger swings. That's just the reality of it. You have this situation where you're doubling your ROI and, in my opinion, on average, increasing your longevity. That's something that you can't pass up, and that's something that parlays can really help you with. When you're parlaying a couple bets that you deem to be winning bets, you can, instead of betting them all straight and kind of getting your account flagged quickly as sharp bettor, parlay them together becomes a little bit more difficult. The second really important part, or the second reason every sharp bettor needs parlays in their toolkit, is because you can synthetically increase your bet size. Honestly, you can even sometimes just increase your bet size. So for example, just starting with that thought, there's a site out there which actually like a sharp book, well known, and I can bet more on a parlay there than I can on a straight. So if I could, let's say, bet $2,000 on a straight or on two straights, I could bet $3,000 on the parlay of them together. So sometimes you can just bet more on parlays. Now, is this because they think parlays are for suckers? I don't know, but I do think that's a bit of the kind of old school thinking where it's like, well, we really want people betting parlays. It's true, kind of. You really want the people who like to bet parlays. You don't necessarily really want people betting parlays. So a slight difference, but I do think that mindset of parlays or sucker bets is still prevalent, especially amongst like the older school places that have been around for a while. So sometimes there you'll just have an opportunity to bet more money on a parlay. But what I mean by this synthetically increasing your bet size, so I was talking to a friend in the industry who's a sharp bettor, and he told me about this guy. I don't know how much details I should give out about this guy or not, but basically one of the rec books, he was limited to like pennies, dollars, maybe $1 or $2 max bet in that account, because he would like parlay and round robin and essentially just make $1 bets that were like 15 like parlays and do all sorts of different versions of round robins. He was able to synthetically increase his bet size to the point where he was making $30K a month on an absolutely nuked rec book account, right? So you would never be able to do that betting $1 straights, right? But you can do that betting $1 to $2 parlays. I don't know if he's making 30 a month. What's his bankroll gonna be? Probably quarter to half a mil or whatever it is. Like all of a sudden, doing a 20 leg $1 parlay actually is like about Kelly. So, in that situation, you can bet. When I say synthetically increase your bet size, what I mean is come closer to your true Kelly recommended bet, right? So you're not actually betting more, but you're betting more in the fact that like your expected dollars returned goes up. So if you take, for example, the 50% or the plus 100 bets we were talking about, the 2 plus 100 bets where we were winning 55% of the time, if we could bet the same amount on the parlay as we could on the straight. So let's say we could bet $100 on both, right? So if we had a big bankroll, so instead of having the $1,000 bankroll we had in the example, let's just say we have a $10,000 bankroll. So we're like, whatever, we don't really, we just want to bet max either way. Well, especially if you add like a third leg, what would happen if you add the third leg is you would be like, okay, I would make, each bet we were making $10 in expected dollar value. So string together $300 bets, $10, $30 total. If you parlay the three together, just again, have to trust my math. I did the math. You can go check it. You have a 33% ROI, 34% ROI. So you're making $33.50 just betting the parlay for 100. So already you're making more money betting the parlay than you would betting the same amount on the straights each. So if you can bet the same amount on parlays as you can on straights, if you have a really big bankroll, it's probably time to start considering switching to the parlays. So you're getting closer to your true Kelly, which I call synthetically increasing your bet size. The third reason everybody here, if you're a sharp bettor, is you need to start considering parlays is because through a lot of trial and error, I have deemed it almost certain that parlays are less likely to move lines than straights are. There's basically two reasons to not move a line. They're both good and they are mutually exclusive. So one is you don't want to get CLV. The other is you want to bet it again. So even if you're just betting something once, you still don't want to necessarily move the line because you don't want CLV. If you know you want to bet it again at a couple other places or, have a couple other, friends and family come and hit it, then you don't want to move the line. So no matter what, you don't want to move the line, even if you're only betting it once. And parlays are less likely to move a line than just betting something straight. I think it's probably has to do with the back-end software of sportsbook. If you think about it, especially like, let's say you bet something that's like you deem to be a great bet. It's like 10-15% ROI bet, and you pair it with something you think's break even, 1%, whatever. And they do have you labeled as someone who might know what they're doing. You send them that parlay of just the two bets, and they have to decide like which of these bets is, if they're even actually manually looking something over, they're going to still have to decide which of these bets is the bet that this smart person likes. Now, let's say it's a 3-leg, a 4-leg. It becomes a lot more complicated. And also it becomes more complicated to handle it in any automated fashion, like any auto mover. No matter what, if you're parlaying, you're going to kind of disguise your action a little bit better, and you're going to be less likely to affect the market, which is going to help no matter what. So that's kind of just a quick number 3, very important, but pretty obvious. Not much else to talk about there, but it's definitely something that you need to consider. And now to the really good stuff. This is going to be the 2 reasons why parlays make up over 50% of our betting P&L. And reason number 1 is correlated parlays. And what a correlated parlay is essentially when you have 2 legs, let's just say they're both 50%, but if one leg hits, whatever, the other leg, since they're intertwined, becomes more likely to hit as well. And a very easy way to conceptualize this is a quarterback passing and a receiver on their same team receiving. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. If Patrick Mahomes has a passing prop that's over under 20.5 completions, Travis Kelce has a receiving prop that's over under 5.5 receptions. If Patrick Mahomes goes over 20.5 completions, Travis Kelce is much more likely to go over 5.5 receptions. Flip side to the under, right? These are not independent events. They're actually dependent. So it's like if probability of A what's probability of B? And B is Kelsey passing. So if A happens, what's probability of B? And it's different than just probability of B. The gist of it is that there's all of these relationships in sports because teammates and opponents have all influence each other. And there's certain situations where if one team does this, then it's more likely the other team will go over or under like a certain, in a certain stat or certain prop. These relationships exist all throughout sports, and they're mostly accounted for by the sports books. Now you get into SGPs, which is where in the traditional parlay system, which is like they're not going to try and add any correlation effect. Plus 100 and a plus 100 equals plus 300. This is going to be like if you parlay a football money line with another football money line. They're basically not going to let you, or they're going to try not to let you do anything in that system that's correlated, right? Because every time you do something correlated, they're technically not pricing for correlation, you gain an advantage. So if you're in that system, they try and block correlation, say you can't do it. The first thing that you can do to win with correlated parlays is find correlation in that system that the sports books are not blocking, and that does exist. The second thing you can do is play in the SGP system, or play in the system where they try and price correlation into their lines, but they might be making a mistake. So what's an SGP? It's going to allow you to do that, Mahomes and Kelsey, but it's not going to give you plus 300. It might give you like plus 175 or something like that. And you're going to have to find situations where they're not properly accounting for certain facets. It might be certain pairs of QBs and wide receivers are more or less correlated. Certain stats are actually, not correlated when, they think they are, whatever it is. But basically in that system, you have to find where they're pricing correlation wrong. In the other system, you're trying to find correlation where they don't know there's correlation. So those are the two ways you win betting correlated parlays in today's sports betting ecosystem. The last, but maybe the most important, is maxing the pain for the sportsbook when they make an error. What is that? Basically, you're going to get the most money out of sportsbook errors if you can find a way to parlay them together, synthetically get more down, right? So it's kind of a mix of these two concepts, but it's important to talk about under the, situation of the sportsbook making an error, because these are such valuable times. It doesn't happen a lot, but your P&L is very chunky. It's not normally distributed. So when sportsbooks make errors or they miss some huge correlation, so the other example, these are going to be the times when you're going to, you can make a month, 2 months worth of P&L in one day. You could even probably make like a year's worth in one day if you really nail it. So I'm going to give you my favorite example of a bet that I missed and I'm still sad about because it happened in golf. It was the Pebble Beach Pro-Am this year. And what happened was the tournament played Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Weather's like okay. Sunday, the weather is like absolute joke. Like 40-mile-per-hour winds, 100% chance of rain. It's going to rain like a couple inches, and there's just no way they can play Sunday. So we kind of know they're not going to play Sunday. They say maybe they'll try and do a Monday finish, but the level of rain and everything on Sunday, plus Monday not being projected to be like a great day and have some additional rain, it made it definitely possible that they were going to call the tournament at 54 holes. This is a tournament that at the time Wyndham Clark was listed at plus 200 to win. Plus 200 to win, he's leading the tournament. So if they call it, then bam, your plus 200 bet on Wyndham Clark pays off. That's great, right? Probably a pretty good bet. You could do some calculus of like how often the tournament has to get called at 54 holes for you to, make that a profitable bet or whatever. But the best bet in that situation I saw was a parlay of top 20s. So what happened was, as the last group was coming up 18, this was I think Clark and Aubert, right before the last putt dropped, when there couldn't be any change in the top 20, this person parlayed together the entire top 20 to finish in the top 20. This is like $1 million opportunity, and it was completely within the rules. And the bet is basically, I don't know, it's plus some insane amount, right? Like you're going to win 500 grand from like a $50 bet or something. The bet is simply at that point, is the tournament going to get canceled or not? So the tournament probably had like a 30, 40, 50% chance of getting canceled. And if the tournament gets canceled, you win that bet. So you're betting like a plus 100 bet and you're getting like plus $1 million on it. So that's a situation where you're taking advantage of a unique opportunity, you know, or let's say the sports book were to make an error, right? Like a true error. You could parlay that error. This is the Mikal Bridges or the Draymond Green SGP, right? Whereas like Draymond was going to come on to play like the tip off when Klay Thompson came back, right? And everybody just parlayed his unders because he was like injured, but he was going to come on ceremonial, like play for the tip off and then timeout, get taken out. So everybody parlayed his unders together because the sportsbook wasn't accounting for the fact that like if Draymond played, he would only play 30 seconds. And if, you know, he sat, they would all be void. So it was like this amazing opportunity. So when these special situations come up, think about parlays. You know, you're going to be able to get more down. You're going to be able to hit big tickets. And oftentimes, like, the thing you're betting on might be a 50-50 event, like the Pebble Beach thing. And you're going to be able to get, like, plus 100,000 on it, you know, something insane. So, but you can only do that through parlays. And I think the okay bet that wasn't as good was Wyndham Clark plus 200. That's a straight bet, right? That's the mind of like, you know, what's a good, yeah, that's the straight better's mind. But if you're also thinking in parlays and saying like, what could I do to maybe really hit the gas on this thing? What can I do to really make some big money? Then you start thinking like that other person parlays all the top 20s and makes serious money, making the people with their, you know, plus 200 Wyndham Clark tickets. You're like, that, you know, that's cute. nice job, you know, good win. You want to be the other person, right? And you want to be able to max out the few situations like that you find a year, because those are going to have huge impacts on your betting P&L. All right, so that is my overview of parlays from a sharp betting perspective. I think that they are still dramatically underutilized, especially by people who've come from a straight betting background, who've maybe been doing this for a long time. And I think that a lot of the big wins and the best bettors right now are utilizing some form of parlaying in their action, because it's just like, one, it's what the sportsbook wants. Like I said, you don't necessarily want people betting parlays, but you want the people who are betting parlays. FanDuel and a lot of other sportsbooks are getting over 50% of their handle of 50% of their profits from parlays now. If you want to blend in, if you want to do the thing that the sportsbook is looking for but also make money, which is the key, that's the sweet spot, is if they're like, hey, we want you to bet parlays, and you're like, hey, so I want to bet parlays too, and you make money, you make more money, you increase longevity. There's just more opportunity there than there is with straight bets. So I urge everybody, if you're a sharp bettor and you've mainly been playing straights, to start to consider how you can work in some parlay strategies to your current strategy. So anyway, thanks everyone for watching the episode. Again, if you're pressed for time, you're new to the space, and you're looking for a way to, an easier way to beat the bookmaker, GP Picks Plus just launched. I'm really proud of the methodology behind it, the price movement methodology of finding what sharp bettors are betting and then alerting you to a better price somewhere else. Personally, I think this is the best top-down methodology. It's why I chose it for GP Picks Plus, and it's why I think that you should give it a shot. If you're just starting out, you need to get some wins under your belt, or you're pressed for time and you only have an hour or so a day, it's perfect for you. Automated bet feed, it works 24/7 sending you bets. So go check out the link in the description and let me know what you think. All right, I'll see everybody on the next episode.